What were they thinking?
Chatting Tracks. Let's talk music.
Hi, it's Bobby. It's Chatting Tracks. Let's talk music. Let's talk music indeed. Welcome to today's episode. Going different today. We're going to look at the 10 worst albums from some of the greatest bands and artists of all time. Now, we all have our off days. I'm more than guilty of that. But we're going to look at some of these albums and ask them, why did they release it? I'm going to look into some of the tracks on there, find out what went wrong, and give you some facts about them along the way as well. If you're a first-time viewer, welcome to the channel. I'm really pleased you're here. And if you're a returning subscriber, hello, mate. Lovely to have you back. Thanks for joining me again. Anyway, let's get into the list, shall we? The worst top 10 of all time. At number 10 is Cut the Crap by The Clash. Kicking off our list is Cut the Crap by The Clash. Released in 1985, this album marked a turbulent period for the band. After Mick Jones was fired, the dynamic duo of Joe Strummer and Paul Simonon were left to pick up the pieces. Unfortunately, the results were far from the punk brilliance they were known for. The production was heavily criticised for the overuse of synthesizers and drum machines, a stark contrast to their previous raw punk sound. Tracks like Dictator and We Are The Clash fell flat with both fans and critics alike. Did you know that Joe Strummer later admitted that he was embarrassed by the album and blamed the producer Bernie Rhodes for its failure? You gotta blame someone, I suppose. At number 9, St. Anger by Metallica. Next up, we have St. Anger by Metallica, released in 2003. The album was infamous for its lack of guitar solos and the distinct tin can snare drum sound, which divided fans and critics alike. Despite having some aggressive tracks like Frantic and Some Kind of Monster, the album suffered from poor production choices. The making of St. Anger was also documented in the film Some Kind of Monster, which provides an inside look into the band's struggles during this period, especially James Hetfield, who in that time was in recovery. Now, if you've not seen this film, you've got to see it. It's absolutely incredible. It's just a working dynamic of a band falling apart and working together and surviving. It's amazing. If you can find it, watch it. You won't be disappointed. At number 8, it's Endless Wire by The Who. The Who is one of rock's most iconic bands, but their 2006 album, Endless Wire, didn't hit the mark. It's their first album in 24 years, and expectations were maybe just a little bit too high. Tracks like Mike Post Theme and In the Ether didn't resonate well with fans who were hoping for a return to their classic sound. Pete Townsend originally envisioned Endless Wire as a full-scale rock opera like Tommy and Quadrophenia, but ultimately it became a standard album with a more fragmented structure. I've listened to it myself. It's hard work, but it's still a bit of a gem. At number 7, Dirty Work by the Rolling Stones. Dirty Work by the Rolling Stones. Now, the Rolling Stones have a legendary catalogue, but Dirty Work, released in 1986, is often considered as their weakest effort. The album was recorded during a tense period for the band, with Mick Jagger and Keith Richards barely on speaking terms, but that's sometimes when they make their best music, isn't it? Let's be honest. Tracks like Back to Zero and Winning Ugly were criticised for their uninspiring performances and lack of cohesion. During the recording of Dirty Work, drummer Charlie Watts was battling addiction issues, which contributed to the album's chaotic production process. Number 6, Squeeze by the Velvet Underground. Squeeze, released in 1973, is a Velvet Underground album by name only. At this point, all the original members had left except for Doug Yule. Tracks like Caroline and Wordless didn't capture the avant-garde spirit of the band's earlier work. In fact, Lou Reed, who left prior to recording this album, famously disowned Squeeze, calling it a poor Doug Yule album. Wow, saucer of milk for Mr. Reed, please. You're welcome. At number 5 is Thank You by Duran Duran. Duran Duran tried their hand at a cover album with Thank You, released in 1985, but it didn't go over well. The band's editions of classics by artists like Bob Dylan and Led Zeppelin were widely panned. Songs like 911 Is a Joke and White Lines were particularly criticised for their lacklustre performances. John Taylor, the band's bassist, later admitted that Thank You was a mistake, citing it as an example of a misguided attempt to diversify their sound. So which one are you, a Spandau or a Duran Duran fan? Me, I'm Duran Duran. So they can't put any feet wrong. This might be a bad album, but the rest of their catalogue, incredible. At number 4, it's Van Halen 3. I got nothing for that one. Van Halen 3 by Van Halen. Van Halen's third lead singer Gary Cherone made his debut with the band on this 1998 album. The album was a critical and commercial disappointment. Tracks like Without You and Fire in the Hole failed to capture the magic of the band's early work with David Lee Roth and Sammy Hagar. Now them two are just impossible to replace. In fact, Eddie Van Halen took bass duties on this album, replacing longtime bassist Michael Anthony, who only provided backing vocals. That's a story for another day. Tracks like Without You and Fire in the Hole failed to capture the magic of the band's early work with David Lee Roth and Sammy Hagar. Now them two are just impossible to replace. In fact, Eddie Van Halen took bass duties on this album, replacing longtime bassist Michael Anthony, who only provided backing vocals. That's a story for another day. At number 3, The Cosmos Rocks by Queen and Paul Rodgers. The Cosmos Rocks by Queen and Paul Rodgers. The Cosmos Rocks, released in 2008, was Queen's first studio album since the death of Freddie Mercury, with Paul Rodgers on vocals. While Rodgers is an amazingly talented singer, the album didn't quite live up to Queen's legacy. Tracks like Celebrity and Call Me were met with mixed reviews, and many felt the album lacked the classic Queen sound. I've heard it myself, it's just not there. It's a great album, but it's just not there. Brian May once said that Cosmos Rocks was an attempt to blend Queen style with Rodgers' blues rock influence, but it just didn't get there. Listen to the album at least once if you get a chance. I think you'll agree it's there, but it's not there. It's two different bands trying to do one sound and it doesn't work. But hey, at least they tried. At number 2, it's Press to Play by Paul McCartney. They're getting worse. Even Paul McCartney isn't immune to missteps. Press to Play, released in 1986, was an attempt to modernise his sound with an 80s pop production, but the style fell short. Songs like Pretty Little Head and Talk More Talk were criticised for the overproduction and lack of memorable melodies. During the album, Paul collaborated with 10cc's Eric Stewart on the album, hoping to interject some new musical energy, but the partnership didn't yield the desired results. I've got this album, I've played this album about 3 times, and I just can't get it right. If any of the albums on this list deserve to be here, I do think of this one. Now, I love you, Paul. I really, really do. But this one, for me, it's just a no-go. And finally, at number 1, it's Self-Portrait by Bob Dylan. And finally, at number 1, we have Bob Dylan with Self-Portrait, released in 1970. This double album was a stark departure from Dylan's earlier work, featuring a mix of covers, traditional songs, and a few original tracks. Tracks like The Boxer and Blue Moon left the fans and critics scratching their heads, wondering what Dylan was thinking. Dylan himself later admitted that Self-Portrait was a deliberate attempt to create an album that would repel his newfound fans and allowing him to step back from the intense spotlight. Man, Dylan, he just does what Dylan does, and every time he does it, it's brilliant, even when it's the worst. So there you have it. That's the top 10 worst albums from some of the greatest artists and bands of all time. Let me know in the comments what you think. Do you agree with the list? Do you not agree with the list? Is there a band that you love and there's an album that you think should have gone on this list? Let me know as well. I'd love to know your opinion on that. This channel is all about talking about music. So if you just want to talk about music, hit me up in the comments and let's just talk music in general. I'd love to talk to you about music as well. The big ask, if you could subscribe, that'd be absolutely amazing because I just love listening to music and talking about it and doing these lists. And while you're not here, why not check out the rest of the channel if it's your first time? I've got reaction videos, deep dives, I do interviews and live streams as well. If you've already subscribed and you're coming back again, thank you, mate. Welcome back. I'm so pleased you're still with me on this journey and I appreciate you so much. I really, really do. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you think of the list and let's just talk music. And until the next time, love and peace.